Hello and welcome in the review. Tonight we analyze. We can say we analyze. We analyze the Unidentified series broadcasted on History Channel. So, why this series in particular? I think most people underestimate the amount of information in just a simple setting as this series. There is quite a lot of things to just understand, and the way it's filmed makes it very difficult to just listen and extract the information. So it starts by Christopher Mellon. He declares that the US airspace is violated by aircraft with unknown possibilities. We are talking here about a major figure, former Deputy Secretary of Defense for Intelligence. He is one of the main players on the field still right now, and that man declares that the United States airspace is violated by aircraft with unknown possibilities. Just wait that sentence. Just understand what is inside that sentence coming from Christopher Mellon. And that's the first sentence of the whole series. He then continues that extraordinary claims requires extraordinary proofs, a saying by Carl Sagan, and but concludes that and no, we have proof, and that's the first word of the whole series. So it's very, very interesting to hear him say these things. So Louis Ando is interviewed. He interviews then Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich. We know her identity now because, yeah, it has been revealed a couple of months ago, maybe 6 months ago, something like that. She appears anonymous inside that documentary. Elizondo declares that he's still bound by secrecy, and he expects that testimonies like the one from Lieutenant Commander Dietrich will force the hand of the government. We switch then to Brian Bender. He thinks that the subject is a poison inside the administration, so we have to find a way to pass the information along, and having testimonies of pilots is necessary. So we then switch back to the testimony of Lieutenant Commander Dietrich. She sees something in the water. She has been contacted by the Princeton, the eyes of the fleet, and she's diverted to do an interception. She's astonished, then worried because she thinks of a wreck of a plane in the sea which has just crashed. They then talk all at the same time through the radio, and then she sees a white object, smooth, no glass, windows, or wings, no no surface control, no holes, and it just looks like a giant 12 meters long tic tac. She declares that the sighting is innovating because it shows high speed, high acceleration, and just taking huge amounts of G's due to the inertia. She declares that she doesn't know how she can fight this. Their two crafts aren't armed unless they run into it. So, and that was impossible given the movement of the objects. She stays above while her commander dives directly towards the object. The episode then switched back to Brian Bader. Brian Bender, he's a journalist for Politico, and that he highlights the importance of such a testimony. We have then a picture, a portrait of Lou Elizondo. He defines himself as a counterintelligence officer for the Department of Defense. Tom DeLonge declared that his former special operations, then acted inside secret spy organizations and ended leading these programs. The episode then switched back to Christopher Mellon. He declares that Lou is ready to take risk inside the administration. Thank you, Christian and Mr. Spectrum Sin. Louis Elizondo used to convince people around him. We have then Brian Bender that came to light, and he says that Louis Elizondo came to the subject as a skeptical and then became a convert and sought to bring this information up. Finally, we went back to Elizondo and declared that there are many incidents and the number is growing over time. So that kind of framing of the subject is really important. You want to introduce the viewer inside the story. So we are following Elizondo's story, but we have very interesting data that is given to us. We know that he is a counterintelligence officer for the Department of Defense. Sorry. Sorry about that. And it's something that is a bit weird because depending on the episode, he's either intelligence officer or counterintelligence officer. So I'm not sure if it's a mistake from the company or if it's who he has been both, but at different times. So either way is possible. He's presented as the hero, the rogue operative that tries to be more just than the administration. It's a figure of many narratives, and it doesn't mean it's not true, but it's what is being shown, what is being narrated through the episode. He declares that he tried to work within the limits imposed to him, but could not and resigned out of loyalty. The episode then introduced the major point of the first season, which is the Nimitz carrier strike group case of November 14th, 2004. It is the Nimitz is an aircraft carrier. It is accompanied by the destroyers USS Higgins and Chaffee and the attack submarine USS Louisville. The Princeton is a radar-equipped missile cruiser that is the eyes of the fleet and observe everything coming into the range of operation. The carrier strike group operates 60 to 70 miles of San Diego, between San Diego and Ensenado. And the weapons officer that is still anonymous today sees something in the water. So here we go to the Fravor testimony. His WISO, his secondary pilot inside the craft, warns him that he sees something in the water. Dietrich is flying alongside. Fravor descends. The object that was at the surface of the water comes to meet him. They enter a turnaround. Fravor tries to cut it by rushing towards the object, and this one takes off and crosses 60 miles in 1 minute. That gives a speed of 3,700 miles per hour. What is even more interesting that it appears to go directly to the cap point, that is the rendezvous point that is only known by the pilots. Trevor declares that he doesn't say that it's coming from outer space, but he doesn't say either that it's coming from Earth. The two fighters then come back to the Nimitz, and a next fighter is launched to go after the object. For that second pass, the pilots declare that the object jammed his radar, but he managed to get a lock on it. At this moment, we have a big cut. Lou meets retired Lieutenant Colonel Chris Cook, who is a former fighter pilot, and Ross Hamer, who has flown commercial aircraft his entire career and works for the National Air and Safety Board. What is a bit weird for me, I'm not sure if I understood correctly the episode, because I feel like there are another video showing the Tic Tac that hasn't been released. We are being shown two different videos of the Tic Tac. And it's not my understanding in the three videos, two published by the New York Times and one by the New York Post, if I remember well, that there are two videos on the Tic Tac. So that's something I have to dig a bit more. Both experts don't understand how this object can stay airborne in the video that are being shown to them. We have then the introduction of the five observables. The five observables are flight characteristics of UFOs, anti-gravity, instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocity, which is defined as a speed superior to Mach 5, low observability, meaning any kind of stealth technology, and transmedium travel, the ability to travel in any medium without losing speed. We then switch back to Brian Bender, that says that to his knowledge, and Brian Bender is a reference in Politico, nobody has this kind of technology today. In the video, we see the object that accelerates extremely fast and leaves the targeting pole. So that was the subject of debate maybe 6 months ago. Some people saw the video for the first time and noticed that at the end of the video, the object managed to evade the lock of the targeting pod and thought it was new. And we see here that in the first episode of Unidentified, they already said that the object accelerated extremely fast and that allowed him to evade the targeting pod. So that's just an example of the density of information that has been ignored until today. So it's really important. If you haven't watched it, I cannot recommend enough that you watch this series and take your time and pause it and listen to each sentence. Each sentence has a meaning inside it. And not even hidden, it's just plainly explained. Cook declared that it doesn't behave like anything he knows, and that would be a real danger. So here we have the big narrative that is being put together, is that even if these objects aren't a direct threat, they aren't aggressive, they don't attack, just by being in the airspace and being on the trajectory of the flights, they are, by definition, a flight risk. We have then a break that will happen quite a few times in the series. It's in sort of briefing sequence where we have the A team. It's the UFO A team. You have Christopher Mellon, Tom DeLonge, Lou Elizondo, Steve Justice. Steve Justice is an aviation engineer at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, the highly secretive and prototype engineering specialized part of Lockheed Martin, and Al Petoff, that has been a scientist for the CIA for the most part of the 20th century. Bender then appears on screen and says that this team is the best possible team. So you can really put the music of the A team at this moment inside the episode. It would work really well. We have then a little description of Tom DeLonge. Tom DeLonge launches TTSA. We've talked formerly with William McCasland that managed the Air Force Research Lab, the most important research lab in the US Army in terms of budget, and that is rumored to be very involved with, how to say that, interesting materials. We have then the portrait of John Podesta, that is a governmental apparatchik. He has been in the Democratic halls of powers for the last 20 years and very involved with the Clintons, and how the WikiLeaks exposed what DeLonge was trying to do. That burned him quite a lot, him and his contacts. He said in the episode that the only rule is to not give away the name because the stigma is still very strong, and WikiLeaks just exposed every name Tom DeLonge was talking to. We have then George Knapp that appears in the episode and is asked if Tom DeLonge is being manipulated by shadow men. George Knapp says that it isn't the case. We have then a portrait of Christopher Mellon, and we learn that his motivation came from the 9/11 trauma, where the intelligence services of the United States failed to prevent the catastrophe of the World Trade Center. And really, what pushed him beyond the line is the Nimitz case, with the amount of data that is available. The Mellons, for those who are not Americans, are one of the most powerful families in the United States. His nickname inside the government was the man with all the secrets. Mellon narrates that one time, while visiting Area 51, he asked the guys there if they have seen anything, and they answered yes, they see strange things at night, and that baffled him. Christopher Mellon doesn't think it's a test of experimental prototypes on US troops. So that was also a subject of debate. Problem is that the army has been very ambivalent. In the very early days of the atomic bomb, they tested the bombs on their own soldiers to see the effects of radiation. So it's very hard to say definitively that the army would never try prototypes on its own troops, because historically it happened. We have then the presentation of Senator Reid's letter in 2009, where he explained that we need to master UFO technologies before our opponents, and that's the creation of ATIP. So we know we know now that ATIP was just a nickname given to prevent leaks, and that was just for covering OSAP. It's explained in the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. We have then a flashback to Blue Book and another another very great quote from Christopher Mellon. So, Christopher Mellon, former Deputy Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, declares that the government behind the scenes decided to discredit the phenomena. Just the weight of that sentence alone it's genius. We then come back to Dietrich, and she declares that if she had been alone, she would have never said anything. The fact that the four pilots were witness, so you have two fighter pilots plus the whistles plus the additional fighter pilots that were sent to intercept the objects were sufficient for them to speak about it, but their testimony, even all put together, did not trigger anything, according to Fravor. Fravor tells Elizondo that he and Dietrich met with congressmen responsible for national security, and no one was informed of that briefing, and nothing can be found on the official agendas. So that's very interesting because around 8 months ago, I think it was John Greenwald that that questioned this briefing because nothing could be found on the agendas, and we see that 3 years ago it was stated that it didn't appear inside the agendas. Dietrich declares that it may be a brand new technology that is not yet known, and Fravor asks the real question is that are we in a scenario like E.T., the extraterrestrial, or in an Independence Day scenario? So are we too comforted? So what is very funny that Fravor, like 6 minutes ago inside the episode, said, I don't know if it's extraterrestrial or not. And 6 minutes later, are they good extraterrestrial or bad extraterrestrial? So that's very interesting to see how fast it moves inside the episode. We have then Louis Elizondo that gives a conference for the MUFON, and is asked what's the worst case scenario. He answers that it's too late because it's already here. Either we live with our heads buried in the sand and hope it goes away, or we can pull our heads out of the sand and try to understand how it works. So what is really really important for me is that this very specific point has been discussed a month ago inside the Financial Times, that was very worried that the UFO subject coming to mass media could crash the market, and said that it was better to not talk about it to reduce the risk. So here we have a back and forth at 2 years difference between inside that debate on how to react to UFOs. It's the closure of the first episode. We start episode 2 with Kevin Day, who is a chief radar specialist on the USS Princeton. He's the first to detect these objects and send the fighters in pursuit of a Tic Tac. He spots 10 or 12 objects descending from the edge of the atmosphere to 28,000 feet at 100 knots. At that speed, a plane would have stalled. In all, there were more than 100 radar contacts around Catalina Island during that time. The Princeton has just been equipped with the Aegis Spy-1, a specialized radar ship able to track hundreds of targets and identify them. Kevin Day, that is a chief radar specialist, could not identify these spots. Captain J. Howe Smith comes down inside the room, and Day tells him that they should intercept the objects. And at this moment, at the very moment Day tells his captain that they should intercept this object, the objects descend from 28,000 feet to zero in 0.7 seconds at a speed of 2,400 miles per hour. It's equivalent to Mach 30. The captain accepts the interceptions. Princeton asks Fravor and Dietrich to go intercept the objects. They observe the Tic Tac climb to 28,000 feet, and while other fighters are launched to carry out interceptions. additional interception. So there have been other events inside that Nimitz event with Fravor and Dietrich. On this occasion, one of the video that is being released to the New York Times is filmed. They see on the screen object descending from the sky. He says that it was raining UFOs and that he knew their location. Each time they were intercepted, they would pass at sea level instantly, then rise and continue their trajectory at 100 knots. It was as if they wanted to be left alone. There is no technology, no conventional technology is able to do that. That sentence has been, to my knowledge, used nowhere. I think it's one of the most important sentences in that case. Each time they were intercepted, they would pass at sea level and then instantly rise and continue at 100 knots. After talking to Fravor, he said that the objects made him look ridiculous. They decided to write a report to document what happened, but the radar and communication data have disappeared, which should be impossible. The tapes exist, but they are empty of the encounter. The objects disappeared near the coast of Baja, California, near a group of islands. So we have then the coordinate 2854.36.0 north, 118.15.36.0 west. The captain of the Princeton did not seem to react and did not seem to want to act and make any noise about what happened. He then declares that if these things are hostile, we are screwed. Christopher Mellon comes back inside the episode and said that he tried to get his hands on the logbooks of the Princeton, but the National Archives said that the logbooks from that date are missing, and it's not due to classification. Christopher Mellon had the highest classification level possible. Several weeks later, another radar operator who worked the same day with Kevin Day became vocal. So it's really interesting because we have some former CIA sources that have came to light recently that said that there were no cover-ups. Here we have logbooks from a ship that disappeared at the exact same date. There were encounters. There were encounters. So it is major. It's really interesting, and it's not coming from anyone. It's said by Christopher Mellon. He continues in saying that my hope is that we will make serious, credible effort to acquire, analyze data that can tell us whether this UFO issue actually involves some other civilization or reveals a breakthrough from the part of our adversaries, or even potentially an ally. So Christopher Mellon himself said it can be another civilization. We have been introduced to Gary Voorhees, that was the other radar operator that worked the same day with Kevin Day. 4 days before the Nimitz encounter, the Spy 1 operators asked to reset the computers because they saw 3 tracks, which were moving either at several hundred knots or stationary, or moving really fast. And their behavior seemed to be watching the Princeton and the carrier fleet. It corroborates Kevin Day's testimony and the sonar reports detecting them underwater and seeing them moving at more than 70 knots underwater, according to Gordon Rum, who asked not to be questioned again. And no one else wanted to speak again. So that was the testimony of Gary Voorhees. Very interesting because we have the proof that it was a transmedium vehicle that was being used and moving at an incredible speed of 70 knots underwater. Uh, the reports came back from the USS Louisville. An helicopter then arrived with people asking for the recordings, and Voorhees was ordered to erase anything that had not been taken away previously. It was the first and only time in his career that he was asked to do this. Very important sentence. Near Catalina Island is a channel 1 kilometer deep. The island is a former Secret Service training camp, and in the past, strange things have been seen there. We have then a flashback to January 21st, 1954. Kate Johnson, the founder of Skunkworks and creator of the SR-71, was observed at an observation from his ranch. He and two pilots saw a large boomerang flying near Catalina. Catalina is located between the Vanderberg firing range and the Nimitz W72 area. Could these be secret prototypes? There are antennas on Catalina Island that correspond to government devices, according to Elizondo. You have then a flash to Brian Bender that said that it's possible that this is an American prototype. We go back to Steve Justice. He can talk about what he did at Skunkworks. But a test flight took place the same week as the Nimitz case. It was an X-43 scramjet, a rocket plane, and it was in the same area, but its propulsion is very visible. You have literally a gigantic flame at the back of the craft, and the craft can't change directions very easily. Moreover, it was flying at over 50,000 feet. It is possible that the absence of report made by the Admiral on these circumstances is due to a cooperation on a prototype test. We then go back to Mellon that said that he would prefer that they were prototypes, but does not think so because there is no trace of this cooperation. Any exercise would have left a paper trail. The videos were declassified, and it was the released videos that, I'm sorry, it's a complex one. So the videos that have been released were declassified. If it was a secret project, they could never have been shown. They would be classified. None of the team members ever heard of such a prototype. We have then a flash forward of 8 months. All the pilots involved with the Tic Tac made themselves known. Mellon declares that we have to fight against the incredible stigma there is on this subject. They show a 1964 report of a similar device. And in 2009, the Department of Defense was able to start establishing recurring patterns through the work of ATIP. We then go to New York with Christopher Mellon. He's using a presentation made under ATIP and a map that shows the different concentration points of the planet of UFOs. It's on my Twitter account. I screenshotted the map. The document says that the US is defenseless against a threat that is identified, and 10 years later, the situation has not changed. So it's 2004, 2014, 2017 at the time of the release of the series. Summary of the file. The science exists for an enemy of the United States to send a weapon system anywhere at any time without the ability to intercept or detect. These are the same points of activity for over 50 years. So to anyone that thinks that it could be China or Russia, 50 years ago, the exact same description came from other pilots and aeronautical engineers. Bender takes the screen and said that it's an ongoing activity of a noun. If they are potential adversaries, we need to know that because they could very easily destroy us with these technologies. Melon says that we must not relax until we have the answer, and Elizondo that it's not an Air Force problem, it's not a Navy problem, it's a global holistic problem. We can now go to the site and check if it's the case or not. So he's referring there to the actual sites where Kevin Day saw most UFOs going to and dropping to sea level. And we enter the episode 3 and last for this summary, express summary of the first 3 episodes of the series. It begins by saying that the Nimitz isn't an isolated incident. For 8 years, Lou Elizondo led a UFO program for the US military, and he had an elite group to do that. We go then to San Diego, California. It's a rally point for these objects. Introduced to us is Sean Kyle, that was one of the witnesses of the events of 2004. He served for 20 years in the Navy. He's a top security officer on the Princeton, responsible for law and order on the ship and conducting patrols. Quote, "We were told that the Nimitz had something going on in the airspace. He was asked to see outside the bridge and report what they saw. He was asked then to what they are looking for. He then asked what they were looking for, and the answer is that the Nimitz has strange contacts. They obviously for him had radar contact, but they didn't tell us what it was. They were ordered to look at 45 degrees of elevation, and at that time he sees a constellation of lights. As it rotates, some of the lights started to disappear, and then they were gone. He was surprised that there was no report. The next day, Cale and Day see the same video that was leaked in 2014 in their email box. Shortly after, he is being mocked to have been witness of UFOs in a team meeting. So Cale directly appears on screen and says that he wants to know how that thing went that fast, why it didn't have any wings, whose it is. If it's not us, it's a national security threat. When he talks about it when coming back from his service, it was outside the field of reality of his contacts. So he pretended at the end that it didn't happen. It was simpler. After 15 years, Lou found him and showed him he wasn't crazy. We go then to Baja, California. Lou and Sean go to the coordinates given by Kevin Day. Sean Kyle says that the question they try to answer is, did it continue after 2004? When Lou was in ATIP, he was limited to military resources. He then questioned the locals, civilians, with Jordi Labrija that connects them with Adriano Eta that flies between the Baja coast and Guadaloupe Island for the last 18 years. He narrates an event that happened January 30th, 2015 at 3 p.m., 20 miles northeast of the Tic Tac that happened 10 years ago. He saw a Tic Tac moving sequentially and reacting to him when he activated his lights and rushing towards him. Adriano then took evasive maneuvers that saved his life, according to him. Local fishermen report strange luminous objects in the waters, bright light spheres. According to Lou Elizondo, 99% of cases have mundane explanations, but here we are talking about objects coming down in the water. We then go to Guadaloupe Island. It's 150 miles out of Baja. Lou Elizondo asks if there is anything weird in the water. Sean Cahill says that it's the specific zone where the US Navy trains very oftenly. Lou and Sean list all the different shapes of UFO that has been sighted on site. Weirdly enough, the episode then switched back to the 1952 Denmark Coast USO case, and as soon as the name of the case is given, it switched back to Guadaloupe Island. So I will make a full episode on the 1952 Denmark Coast USO case because it's a really interesting case, and it was just one sentence inside the episode. Luisando Eschenkeil talks about the magnetic anomaly at the north of the island. We then switch back to Brian Bender that describes a psychological trait of Luisando. Lou felt that his job was to try and get more senior leaders in the Pentagon to pay attention to this. Eventually, maybe to get the public to pay attention. So it's just one sentence, but I think it's a very important one because there we learn that if Lou could have given a briefing to General Mattis, I think disclosure wouldn't have happened. He went public because he couldn't reach Mattis. I think it's really, really important. I can't emphasize enough. It was a worst case scenario for Lou Elizondo. He was stuck, so he went public. If there was no opposition inside the DoD, we would have never had the 2017 articles by Blumenthal, Kiln, and Cooper that launched the disclosure process we are today. So I think it's really that sentence from Brian Bender is extremely interesting. We then switch back to Guadaloupe. Guadaloupe Island is a volcanic island forbidden to strangers by the Mexican government. So fishermen that are witness come see them by boat. One saw a metallic sphere, one a white spherical light, and here witnesses are taken very seriously. They then talk to Mauricio Rojos, that study marine biology on site, and he explained that the magnetic anomaly could attract the sharks here. But nothing can explain what the fisherman saw. He himself was a witness with the captain of his ship. Otherwise, he would think these are hallucinations. In 2006, he saw a very bright sphere coming from the mountains. We have then a switch back to the briefing room. We have a global pattern of UFO hotspots. Elizondo, do you know what it's like to serve your country only to have someone come out and say you're crazy? I spent my life living in the shadows. I put myself out there voluntarily. So I got no one to blame but me. I have people who question my credibility at every turn. I want so badly to tell people what I saw and what I know, but I can't because I have a non-disclosure agreement with the US government. It's very frustrating for me because I know this is real. So what is really interesting that now we are 4 years ahead in time, and it's the exact same Elizondo that we have today. He says exactly the same thing today, and it's been 4 years when people have been hammering him constantly. We continue the same pattern over and over again. Mellon says that the troops are struggling with it and that their small group can help them. Lou then concludes by saying that I've seen too much, I've talked to too many people. I can't in good conscience keep my head buried in the sun. The Pacific Ocean between Southern California and Mexico is a hotspot. Loisondo then explains what happened inside the Department of Defense. Haiti had a small group of allies, but equally there was a small group of people that were diametrically opposed and became increasingly vocal about their opposition to what we were doing. And then we have a very interesting last testimony of an intelligence officer currently working for the DoD. Quote, when I found out Lou was resigning, I was personally very upset. This is my friend, my coworker, mentor, somebody that I truly believed in. Lou sees things in patterns, and he sees the analytic piece behind putting all of this puzzle together and what the various outcomes could be. Unfortunately, he had to work through layers of bureaucracy that you would only read about in 1960s Russia. It doesn't matter what administration it is, it doesn't matter who is in charge, it's just, oh, this is going to be very, very messy, very quickly, I'm gonna pass it along. The government, I believe, doesn't know what to do, they don't know how to address it. If you are pursuing this and you are very vocal, very public about it, you won't have a career. And that's being stated, it's been proven. There is no question that it's dangerous. Then we have a flashback to Bender. Some senior officials that were Christians thought that looking into this stuff was dangerous. We go back to Lou. I was pulling to the office of one of the seniors. The senior looked at me in the eye and said, I want this program to stop. Lou replied, okay, but what's the rationale? The senior said, well, what you are looking at is something that is a demonic presence. We go then to George Knapp. There is a faction in the Pentagon and higher up in the Pentagon of religious fundamentalists who are concerned that anything paranormal, supernatural, is demonic in origin. We go then to John Podesta. There is a natural tendency to sweep the subject away. Lou then appears at the end of the episode. None of the information was being communicated to the Secretary of Defense, James Mathis. Lou served with and for Mathis. Every attempt was thwarted because people were worried about their political careers. Christopher Mellon says that he met with officials, but they didn't see how to pass the Praetorian Guard of General Mathis. And Lou ends the episodes on we've got blinders on, and when you got blinders on, you get blindsided. End of the third episode. So I think it's really important to take out the information from the pictures that are being shown. There is a kind of hypnotic sequential process that is used in the episode of History Channel, where you just don't have time to think about what is being said, how it is being said, why it is being said. So it's really valuable, and so that's why I did that episode, that you extract the information that is being shown, and we have a very clear picture. What was discovered, air quotes, the past few months was plainly stated in the first episode of the series. So it's really, really important to rewatch that series and try to forget that there are pictures and listen to what is really being said. Thank you very much to suffering my French accent. It's Jay. It's Jay's fault. I will say it at the end of each episode until I'm happy with it. I'm working on my English. I'm trying to improve it, and practice makes perfect. So there will be a lot of such videos until I'm very satisfied with the outcome. But I hope that the content at least spared you sometimes if you don't have time to watch all the unidentified episode, that would be a better solution. Regarding all the resources I told you, everything will be linked under 24 hours inside the description of the video. Thank you very much for the viewers that are here, my hardcore team of viewers, and we will see each of us very soon.